Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on the screen below the live stream page at oakville.ca, and staff will be standing by to take your call. When you do call in, staff will then take your name, item number you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided for you to call back to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary-Treasurer will unmute you when it is your time to speak. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for a presentation. If you will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions will be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by the interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly in any proposed conditions that are being offered, the opportunity will then be to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussions. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order for you to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, agent, and any other person who has filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal, and the last day to appeal the decision will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes binding and final, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who has received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in tonight's hearing are to be courteous to, respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. I have no regrets this evening. And do I have any declaration of pecuniary interests? Mr. Talowski, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, as I have with all other applications in the former Sawet Golf Course subdivision, I'm going to declare a conflict on CABA 059 on Sawet Boulevard, as I was responsible for the original approvals in the subdivision.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Talowski. Do I have any other pecuniary interests declarations? I see none. Very well. Are there any deferrals or requests for withdrawals this evening?
Through Madam Chair, I don't have any requests, but you can ask if anybody wants to defer the application, they can raise their hand.
Very well. Are there any applicants who are present at this moment that would like to Request a deferral or withdrawal of application. Okay, I see none. Very well, we'll start with our first application of this evening, which is CAV 058 of 2021 at Albion Avenue, 253 Albion Avenue. I have an agent listed here as Goral Tomaz. The Secretary Treasurer. Okay, yeah, I see him now. Good evening. You have to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. Is that better?
Good evening. Yes,
Good evening.
we hear you now. Good evening. The town staff are putting up your presentation, so go ahead.
Good afternoon, committee members and chair. My name is Tomasz Gurau. I am the applicant and agent for the homeowners at 253 Albion Avenue. We are here proposing a brand new home on the property. We're asking for 3 variances. The first variance is in regards to the garage. We'd like to put a tandem garage in the back on the right-hand side. The second point is the setback. We're asking for a minimum yard setback of 3 meters. Allowed is 4.2. It will be on the far right upside corner of the garage. And the third point is we're asking for additional 250 square feet to make a bit larger living space.
Very well. Are there any questions of Mr. Tomaz at this time? I see none. Sorry, town staff, I hear a ringing. There's an echo. Does anyone else hear it, or is it just me? Okay. Maybe we could take a minute for town staff to figure that out, because it's just echoing every word that's being said.
Madam Chair, it's from your, probably from your microphone. You have to a little bit adjust. You can hear the...
No, I'm using the same one as every time. Is anyone else hearing it? I saw people nodding their heads. So I think we're all hearing it.
Well, the delegate has to unmute his mic before. Probably that's why the echo is.
Okay. Let's keep going, and then if it persists, then maybe we can ask town staff to look into it. Sorry, Mr. Tomaz. Is there anyone who is registered tonight who would like to speak to this application? Ms. Secretary Treasurer, let me know if someone raises their hands.
I don't see anybody.
Very well. Mr. Tomaz, you're familiar with the conditions that town staff have recommended. If you are, we are ready to take the matter into committee for a decision. Okay. You need to unmute yourself. Did I see Ms. Murray put her hand up?
Yes, Madam Chair, prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, having taken into consideration the presentation by the applicant this evening, and noting that there does not appear to be any comments from the public at this time. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings. Number 1, dated 17th of March 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Tomaz. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, you will take Mr. Talowski out for this next application, CAV 059 of 2021 at 2389 Sawet Boulevard.
Good evening. My name is Catherine McKeown from Corsiac Urban Planning. I'm here this evening on behalf of the homes.
Very well. Ms. McEwen, just give us a second. I do have to read the phone number and the procedural for this virtual meeting again. I apologize. This is item number CAV 059 of 2021 at 2389 Sawet Boulevard. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions on joining the video conferencing. Thank you. Good evening. Ms. McEwen, go ahead.
Good evening. Catherine McKeown from Corsiac Urban Planning. So we're requesting a minor variance this evening for a reduced rear yard setback. When the lot was originally cited, it was thought that the southerly lot line was the front lot line, but technically the easterly lot line is the shorter of the two. So technically it is the front lot line, which makes the westerly lot line the rear lot line. So we're requesting a variance for a rear yard setback of 1.15 meters, whereas 7 meters is required. The requested variance is minor in nature, as the interior, the technically rear yard will function as the interior side yard, and it's adjacent to hydro corridor. I think that's everything. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Very well. Thank you very much. Are there any questions of Ms. McEwen at this time? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right now, I actually have a question on the notes from town staff.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to town staff. Part of our notes indicate that the left elevation should be revised to feature more elements similar to the right elevation, such as windows on the second story, to both add an interest to a large blank wall, as well as to support the eyes on the public realm concept. My question to town staff, I've noted your comments. Should this be part of the conditions, or does this come out in the site development plan? And I appreciate that the comments are here, but I am not sure, based on the recommended conditions, if that element would be covered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Through Madam Chair, the reading of condition 1 would be to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, so that would allow urban design staff and the applicant to work out those comments and see changes to the elevation plans. If there were specific items that you would like to include in the condition, we can certainly note that. But again, there would have to be further dialogue in terms of those exact elements that town staff would be supportive of in consultation with the applicant.
Thank you.
And
So thank you for that.
Oh, sorry. The control architect is aware of this lot, and it has been part of the overall subdivision review. So we can deal with it with staff as it moves on.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Does that satisfy your question, Ms. Murray?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so if there is no one who is waiting to speak for this application, we're ready to take it into committee and hear. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the materials, including the written staff report and the submitted drawings provided by the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated March 16th, 2021, and the elevations to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, and the second being that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision, the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction. I would note that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter.
Very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Ms. McEwen.
Thank you.
Ms. Secretary Treasurer, you can bring Mr. Talowski back in. Thank you. Okay, we're looking at item CAV 060 of 2021 at 2435 Applewood Drive. Kenneth CAV 060 of 2021 at 2435 Applewood Drive. If anyone is interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. I believe Mr. Kieran is here for this application. There we go. We see you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. I'm with Kieran Design and I'm the agent for the applicant. And I have a brief presentation I'll run through for this application, which is seeking two variances. One is for a small increase in the garage area, which is indicated on slide 1 here, just for a little bit of extra storage. And then variance 2 is for additional square footage or RFA. If we can go to slide number 2, please. We've just identified the main areas that are contributing to the overage, which are on the second floor, occurring in the middle of the floor plan and towards the back of the second floor. And if we go to slide 3, please, basically just indicating that removal of that square footage wouldn't affect the front elevation. It does increase the depth a little bit, this increased square footage, but the front of the elevation would be unchanged. So we basically tried to hide that square footage from the front elevation. Staff are supportive of both variances, and I can answer any questions if there are any.
Very well. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. Is there anyone in the audience who is here to speak to application CAV 060 of 2021 at 2435 Applewood Drive? If so, Ms. Secretary Treasurer, please let me know.
There is nobody in the waiting room.
Very well. Then we're ready to take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having listened to the applicant's presentation this evening, as well as noting that there were no oral or written letters of objection to this application or support for the application, nor were there any as part of this meeting. I would like to move that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I would like to move it with the 2 following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated April 7th, 2021. And our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Kieran.
Thank you.
Okay. Application CAV 061 of 2021 at 250 Forestwood Drive. Again, the application is CAV 061 of 2021 at 250 Forestwood Drive. If there's anyone who's interested in speaking to this application, the number to call is 905-815-6095. Again, it's 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, I have Richard Mann here as listed as the agent. Okay, I see you, Mr. Mann. Go ahead. The town staff have your presentation up.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Richard Mann. I live at 153 Woodhaven Park Drive in Oakville, and I'm the architect for the owners of 250 Forestwood Drive. The application before you today is requesting two variances, a front yard setback and garage size variance. The reason we're requesting these is because this is an unusual lot. It's a triangular shaped lot, and the lot is approximately 10% smaller than the adjacent properties on Forestwood and Poplar. The triangular shape creates a disproportionate area of front yard in relation to the whole area of the property. In fact, that area within the front yard setbacks is approximately 40% of the lot. The adjacent properties, the rectangular ones on Poplar and Forestwood, have front yard areas that comprise approximately 25 to 30% of their lot area. And the side lot lines on this property, because it's a triangle, they converge to a point at the back. So essentially the rear yard is determined by an arc. You can sort of see that arc on the site plan. That's the extent of the rear yard in the zoning bylaw. What this does do is it makes the two side lot lines basically act as rear lot lines, but they actually have a smaller setback of 4.2 meters, where we typically look for 10.5 meters for the rear yard. So technically that allows for more buildable floor area. We could push the house further back and fit that space, but that would be at the sacrifice of privacy and setbacks for both my clients and the neighbors. So the proposal is for a modest 3-bedroom home that meets the massing, height, and coverage requirements of the zoning bylaw. And the desire is to move it as close as is practically possible to the front lot line, trying to push it away from that compressed corner. Slide number 1 shows the site diagram, kind of outlines the vegetation to remain, and shows the portions of the house proper that are going to project into this front yard setback. And those are the two dark sort of hatched areas. One is by the garage, either side of the covered porch. Those are the areas of the actual house that would project into the front yard setback. The front yard variance requested is to the columns for the front covered porch. This covered porch is an architectural feature that acts as a buffer and a screen to the street, and it pulls across the front of the house, connecting to the circular driveway and giving an inviting entrance to the property. Slides 2, 3, and 4 show the extent of the approach along Forestwood, the extent of the vegetation, and the fact that Forestwood curves in this particular area. So the location of the property and the curve of the road, it creates a scenario where you can't compare the difference between adjacent houses and the fact that there will be a difference in the front yard setbacks. We don't have anything to compare to it immediately beside them. So as we go around, the actual difference in the front yard setback will be much less discernible because of the curve, and also because of the fact that we're maintaining the vegetation along the front of it. So by pushing the house forward, we'll be providing more separation to the neighbors to the rear, as well as creating as large a rear yard as possible. The garage variance is to allow for some additional storage, plus 2 cars. Now, I did notice from planning staff, they had a comment on, they're supportive of the application, but they did have a comment on the single garage door and had put in a request for 2 garage doors. So what I would say is that we're requesting a single door as the access in and out. If we go back to the site plan, so slide 1. Access in and out of this garage is via the circular driveway, which exists now. But what it will require is a 90-degree turn accessing in and out and moving sideways. So what that does is means we can't back up straight into the street. So having a single garage door without that middle post to deal with is an easier access point to get in and out of the garage. Now, we would prefer the single door, but if the committee decides that requiring two doors is preferable, then we would agree to make that change. We feel the nature of the lot is unique, and that the approach that we're taking is sensitive to the area, and it keeps the integrity of the built form in the area in place. And we feel the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and it's worthy of your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Mann. Are there any questions at this time? Ms. Murray, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions at this time are for town staff. Through you, Madam Chair, to town staff. There are notes indicating that from an urban design perspective, the applicant is advised that the proposed garage should be broken up to not visually read as a large single door based on a number of factors. I'm wondering if perhaps town staff would like to speak to that, and if they would like that in the conditions other than specifically stated, or to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning as written, and further clarification as to whether or not circular driveway is permitted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. In relation to the comments provided in the staff report, I actually appreciate the comments that Mr. Mann provided. We didn't actually touch base with transportation engineering staff regarding vehicular movement on site, and Mr. Mann actually makes a good point in relation to the, I guess, width of the paved surface in front of the driveway. It doesn't really allow for a lot of turning radius. So I would actually agree in this scenario that a single door is probably more appropriate, just given that we actually had discussions prior to the application being submitted to maintain as much of the circular driveway as possible to retain the street trees within the road allowance. So I would actually be satisfied in this case that the, I guess, proposal be approved as applied for if the committee chooses to do so.
Okay, very well, thank you. Are there any further items of clarifications or questions? Okay, I see none. If there's no one that would like to speak to this application, the Secretary Treasurer, we're ready to take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, there is nobody for.
Very well, go ahead. Did I see your hand, Mr. Towski? Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd also like to congratulate the applicant in coming to us with only 2 variances on this lot. I saw this property go up for sale. I was convinced we were going to see 6 or 8 variances when an application came forward. So I'd just like to recognize a job well done to try to make this conform. I would note that there is no opposition from the community, and I would also reflect on the comments by Mr. Hassan and Mr. Mann, and I too can appreciate the difficulty of that turning movement, and it appears that the vegetation will add a significant screen to the applicate or to the garage doors. Of course, my phone would ring at this point. Sorry about that. And I would make the approval subject to development proceeding in general accordance with the site plan and elevations submitted to the committee. I don't have the dates of those in front of me, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
We want to list the drawing numbers, Mr. Hassan.
Through you, Madam Chair, unfortunately, I don't see any dates within the title block for the proposed elevations or site plan. So we can say the plan submitted with the application, and they can be referenced back to the files that are in the staff database.
Okay, very well. Okay, all those, is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed.
Thank you.
Through Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mann.
Can I?
Yes.
I do have one question. So the first condition is the one that is imposed from the planning, or just?
It's not to the dissatisfaction of the Director of Planning Services. It is the accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings submitted with the application.
Okay.
And we're going to tie it back to the application that you have on file.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, we're good to go. I'll call the next application. Application CAV 062 of 2021 at 367 Douglas Avenue. Again, it's application CAV 062 of 2021 at 367 Douglas Avenue. I have Dragan Asimovich. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I apologize. I think I was muted there for a second. My name is Dan Chimovic. I'm with DA Design, and I'm the agent for this property.
Good evening, Mr. Chimovic. Your presentation is being pulled up right now. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Actually, this is the survey. Are you able to go to our site plan for this?
Just direct them which page you'd like, and they'll move it accordingly.
Are you able to zoom in the proposed site plan by any chance a little bit? Or? I think that should be pretty good. Yep. Anyhow, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, my name is Dan Achimowicz from DA Design, and I'm the agent for this property. I'm here to ask for approval for 3 variances for this project. The very first one is the flankage yard setback on the right side of this particular site plan, basically facing McDonald Road, as you can see that there. The existing home is depicted in a dark gray hatch, solid hatch, and the addition that we're proposing, the 1-story addition at the back of the property, is depicted with a lighter gray hatch. As you can tell, at the very top right corner of this addition, we're slightly over the 3.5 flankage setback, and we are at 3.14. That would be variance number 1. Variance number 2 that we're asking for has to do with the overall lot coverage from the allowable of 19, and we are asking for 26.06%. However, a large part of that, about 4% of that, is actually the garage that's slightly off of this drawing. If you don't mind just scrolling up a little bit so we can see the garage. Thank you very much. So that the site coverage or lot coverage includes the garage itself, which, as I said, is approximately 4% of this overall coverage. In addition to that, in addition to the 2 variances that our addition is causing, the existing garage, during the actual review with the planning department, the existing garage, which was built quite a few years ago, apparently was built slightly too close to the property line. So we're asking for an additional variance for the rear setback or accessory building setback, which is minimum 0.6, and these existing garages at 0.35 meters. I'd like to just point out something fairly important to that final variance, and it is a support letter from the neighbor who lives directly at the back of this property on McDonald Road. It's Thomas and Christina Blodgett, I believe it's pronounced, provided a letter of support. They're very good friends with the owners of 367, and they have no issues with the garage where it's located. There's no stormwater management issues, and no technical or any other issues that neighbor has. So there is a letter of support for that final variance, and in fact, I think they support this entire application. I believe I've read the comments from the planning department, and I believe the planning department also supports this entire application. We feel it's minimal in scale. We've kept it down to one floor, even though this is basically a 3-story house. So we've kept it low purposefully, not to make it feel or look out of scale with the rest of the neighborhood. And it is going to provide quite a bit of an improvement to the living space, to the kitchen for this young family.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Simovic. Are there any questions at this time or items of clarification? I see none. If there is no one in line to speak for this application, we already take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, sorry, can you repeat if somebody wants to speak, they need to raise their hands because I do have in attendance somebody.
Okay, very well. If there's anyone in the attendance who would like to speak to application CAV 062 of 2021 at 367 Douglas Avenue, now is your time to advise us. Please raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will invite you to the panel. Okay, if no one has responded, Madam Secretary Treasurer, we'll take the matter into committee.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to promote somebody, and if they want to speak, they can advise us because I'm not sure if.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to this application? If you do, please advise us.
There is a person, Alison Andres. She's promoted to panelist, and if you can ask her if she wants to speak, she needs to unmute herself.
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Were you here for this application, Ms. Andres?
Yes.
Okay. If you don't want to speak to the committee, we are taking the matter into committee, and this will end all discussions.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, I appreciate the comments presented by.
You've been muted.
Oh, apologies, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of this application, and the comments presented by the applicant this evening, thank you, very helpful. I also note that there was supporting documentation from the Blodgett family, who are neighbors in behind the proposed property for variance, that are in favor of the application. I am prepared to make a motion. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application subject to the following conditions: that the additions be constructed and the garage be permitted in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings number 1, dated ARP, I'm going to assume that's April 21, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. None opposed.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to application CAV 063 of 2021 at 176 Front Street. Again, it's application 063 of 2021 at 176 Front Street. If there's anyone who is interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. 6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. Good evening, Mr. Martino, how are you? Mr. Martino, if you're speaking, you are muted. We can't hear anything, but we do see your site plan, so you're up.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Terry Martino, Gren Weiss Architect and Associates, and we are the agents for the owners at 176 Front Street. We're present tonight at the committee seeking 3 minor variances to the zoning bylaw for the restoration, renovation, and construction of a small 1-story addition to the west side of the property. The property has significant frontage along Front Street. It's actually 2 lots, but as you can see from the site plan, it is very narrow as it abuts the lake. Its most narrow portion is the eastern side of the property, and the shoreline is sort of angled away. It's deepest on the west side of the property. Just by way of background, and I think it's important to understand the constraints on this particular piece of property, that when we were first approached by the client, we met with Conservation Authority to understand their constraints on the property, being that it abuts the lake and is under their regulation. The engineered development setback for all structures on the building, calculated by their standards today, is a line which occurs out in the middle of Front Street. That is to say, any and all structures on the property right now are within, the setback which is required from the lake. Through that consultation process, you can see, or at least our proposal seeks to remove an existing 1-story addition in the rear yard, and we, in consultation with Conservation, wanted to replace that area. And they identified that the only place that we could, they could discuss with us to replace would be the western portion of the property, where it would be furthest setback from the lake. We took that as an opportunity to add an addition, a 1-story addition, which I'll talk to you about a little later, of a garage and a linking structure to the existing 2-story heritage stucco building. This would allow for a single parking garage, as well as a parking pad with 5.24 meter setback to the road allowance. That is to say that a car, a normal parking space, town of Oakville zoning bylaw is 5.5. That's one of the variances that we're seeking tonight. It's only 5.24, but effectively a car could park fully on the driveway, fully on the property, without hanging over into the road allowance. Furthermore, the garage on the west side is set back from the park approximately 6 meters, where the zoning bylaw would permit a 1.2 meter setback to an attached garage. Perhaps if we could go, well, I'll stay on the site plan. The proposal seeks, as I said, to construct a single car garage on the west side. From an architectural point of view, perhaps if staff could put up the Front Street elevation, please. Thank you. Could you zoom out? Thank you. According to the Canadian Heritage Guidelines for additions to heritage buildings, that they state that additions are to be subordinate to the heritage structure, compatible, but of different building materials so as not to obscure the heritage structure. We see, again, so you see in that elevation, there's the 2-story heritage structure, and the idea behind adding, obviously, the garage, which Conservation identified was the only area that we could build, clad that in stone together with the renovated east side, which is an existing garage, and taking some of that floor area as well as extension of garden walls, which run the property, further to the east, they are, according again to the Canadian Heritage Guidelines, only one-story structures. They have a different roof form, that being flat, and we believe that they accentuate the historical Georgian building in the center. Again, the garage allows additional garage to the west, allows for an outside driveway and proper parking in front of it. The stone walls, as I said, on the western side, we have the west elevation up. I think it's just below that one, but in the park. So that is the view from the public space. Oops. Thank you. Again, we see that as a stone garden wall together with a 6-meter buffer zone on my client's property, which is to be landscaped, as well as the reconstruction of the picket fence. We're actually moving it back onto the property line. It sort of weaves in and out on some of the parkland right now. And we see that as a kind of proper and a very pleasant view from the public space. It sort of echoes the stone walls of the Ericliffe estate on the western side of the park. I guess I would further like to tell the committee that we've been through 2 circulations of site plan. We've worked extensively with staff. We've been to a heritage committee and are working with them diligently. I would also like to point out that we have 3 letters of support, and we just received 1 late now from the residents across the street. These are all residents which either abut the property. They're at 194 Front Street, 221 Front Street, 187 Front Street. These residents would be most impacted by anything in the variances that we are seeking tonight in our building proposal, as well as September 9th, 2020, we received a letter from the Oakville Lakeside Ratepayers Association, which reviewed our proposal and are in full support, and wrote a letter to Director Simeone of the Planning Department, as I said, dated September the 9th, 2020. We've read staff's report. As I said, we've worked closely with them through the site plan process. We read staff's report. We believe that the variances we are seeking are minor. They meet the tests, the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Very well. Are there any questions of Mr. Martino at this time? Okay, I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, I do note that we do have some letters of objection. Has any one of these people sought interest to speaking to the committee? Do we have anyone in attendance today who would like to speak to application CV 063 of 2021 at 176 Front Street?
Madam Chair, I don't see anybody, and nobody raised the hand, but you can repeat the telephone number, so if anybody wants to speak, they can call again.
Sure. The number is 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions for video conference. I don't see anyone on my panel either.
Madam Chair, I just promote.
I can't hear you, Miss.
I just promote Mr. McTavish if he wants to speak, because he was on the list for objections, so I'm not sure if he wants to speak or not.
Mr. McTavish, are you with us?
Yes. He needs to unmute.
You can unmute yourself, and so we can hear you.
How's that?
Very well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And if you do have a camera on, we'd be delighted to have you put that on as well.
Let's see here. There we go.
Good evening.
Hello. I'm Ross McTavish. I live at 53 Navy Street in Oakville. I live in the Heritage District. I've lived in the Heritage District for pretty close to 20 years. I sent in a letter to the Committee of Adjustments regarding what I would see as the decisions of the Heritage Planning, or the Heritage Advisory Committee, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee, had reviewed this application and had said, I'll read they had 17 comments about this application, not particularly to Committee of Adjustments, but about it to Heritage. And in their report, they reviewed it, and their comments included the 2 garages flanking the building on each side creates a focus on the garage and stone and overwhelms the Heritage House. And secondly, ideally the second garage wouldn't be built. Can they reduce it to the 1 garage on the east side and remove the west garage, which would also allow the trees to be retained? And I guess I'm a little confused. I went from a recommendation from Heritage to basically being ignored on the application. And on the application, it states that the Heritage has reviewed it and there's no, for proposed variances and have no significant concerns with the application. So I would say there are concerns with the application, and I don't, I agree with Heritage, and I would like someone to answer the questions as to why we need a second garage to the west.
Very well. I'm sure Mr. Martino has answers for you, as they have been through several rounds with Heritage, as he had indicated. Are these your only concerns, sir? Because I'd like to hear from the other members who have their hands up before I give it over to Mr. Martino to answer all the questions collectively.
Yes.
Okay, very well.
Madam Chair.
Very well. Thank you, sir. I have a Miss Jane Hawkrig raising her hand. If you unmute yourself and put your camera on, we'd be happy to take your submissions.
Can you see me?
Yes, go ahead.
And you can hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. I'm the submission to the committee in terms of my concern about the request for variance number 1. I completely concur with Mr. McTavish, as I don't believe that the staff report to the Committee of Adjustment reflects the comments of the Heritage Oakville Committee. It's understandable that the architect has been working with the staff, but the Heritage Oakville Committee, as I understand it, do have authority on these matters, and I'm concerned that none of their comments have been reflected in the material that has gone to you. We believe from our submission that there are 2 elements relative to the variance that is minor that we submitted. One is the heritage argument, which Mr. McTavish has referenced, and the other one is the importance of the risks that are associated with a parking garage that we don't think is required on the westerly side. And given the things that are in the Heritage report, the Heritage plan about the significance of that street cannot have sidewalks, and it can't be any narrower than it is. It's a pedestrian walkway that the town has encouraged, and the residents, when they bought the property, were fully aware of that, including the architect. And the only other point that I do want to raise that has now come to light, and despite numerous requests on our part, we are members of the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association. We had no awareness whatsoever about the letter that was submitted by our board of directors in September of 2020. We don't think it reflects the membership. There was no transparency on that. And the president of the Residents Association was the real estate agent of record for this property. So we think there's a clear conflict of interest. And we don't think that as a result, I would specifically request that that letter be removed as evidence that the Committee of Adjustment considers for this application. We're okay with whatever you decide, but we don't think that that letter has merit ethically for your consideration.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hawkrig. Are there any questions at this time? Okay, I see none. Is there anyone else in the panel who's interested in addressing the committee? I have to toggle between my... Okay. I have an Ian Cockrell that is in our panel. Is he interested in speaking? I think that's the only other person that is here that...
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you. All right, members, do you have any questions before I hand it over to Mr. Martino to address the concerns? Okay, I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Martino, if you can unmute yourself and address the concerns of the residents.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the comments of the first speaker, Mr. McTavish, I think the comments that he's talking about, or at least he's referring to, was the original heritage meeting that we attended. That meeting wasn't a committee meeting for an application. It was more just to get a sense of comments back. And some of the written comments that appear in that committee were just thoughts of various members. Again, we've worked extensively with Heritage after that meeting to address a lot of their concerns. They had an idea of the original stone we were proposing was too sharp. From that down, we've added green roofs. We looked at the landscaping on the west side of the property adjacent to the park. We reduced the size of driveways, specifically at the east side of the property. We planted the tree out front. So we believe we've addressed a lot of those concerns. I'm fairly confident with my discussions with Heritage that we have moved a long way, and I will be appearing before them next Tuesday for our application. I can tell the committee that we looked at saving the trees. It's sort of an impossibility because the driveway is going to be there. But in compensation, we've worked out with development engineering that we are planting 13 new trees on the property in compensation for the 2 trees that we're removing. With respect to Ms. Hartwig's comments, second speaker, again, I believe the comments of the Heritage Committee, we have worked with them and that we are referring to them. I would just like to say that this matter of safety with respect, I'm keenly aware of the number of people that walk down Front Street. And we took this as an opportunity to get a proper garage, unlike the one to the east, where when the cars park out in front of it, the cars are fully on the right of way because of the existing setback. The new garage is set back 5.24 meters from the property line and would allow a car to park one inside the garage for the homeowner, the second one outside of the garage, and be fully still on their private property, thus increasing the safety or ameliorating the existing condition whereby the only parking available right now is the front of these garage, which the cars are fully in the road allowance. So I believe the situation is better by the construction of this new garage.
So the second garage, Mr. Martino, it's still going to be utilized as a garage, but it's only to come in and out of it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct. We are actually, it's an existing 2-car garage. We are taking over 1 bay for habitable space, and so therefore the east garage will be a single-car garage, and it will be used to park cars. But it'll be inside the garage and inside.
Okay. Are there any items of clarifications or questions of Mr. Martino at this time? I see none. Okay. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, we're ready to take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, on first blush in this application, I can see how some of the area residents have reacted to the addition of a separate garage onto the Heritage House, but I believe when you look at this application in context, we're actually creating something that's far superior. We're taking 3-car garage doors immediately on the street, very prominent, reducing that to one, while taking the new garage and placing it set back behind the face of the building, which is maintaining the prominence of the heritage building from that viewpoint on the west side. And I'm satisfied that the 6-meter separation from the driveway to the property line with the park and a proper, as Mr. Martino says, fully off the right-of-way driveway provides sufficient setback in that situation. And Madam Chair, I would, I guess, put my faith in the Director of Planning that if there continues to be significant concern of the Heritage Committee, that the Director is going to reflect that in any site plan approval. So, Madam Chair, I'm prepared to move the application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. Again, recognizing the letters of objection from area residents, as well as letters of support from Front Street residents. And Madam Chair, I'm finding myself more influenced by the support of residents on Front Street that are going to see this property on a daily basis. So Madam Chair, again, I'll show my support for this application and make its approval subject to the additions being constructed in accordance with the final approved site plan, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Talowski. And this is subject to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning as staff had recommended, correct?
Yes.
Very well. Although, are there any discussions on this recommendation? Ms. Murray?
Yes, Madam Chair, just a comment, and it speaks to some of the notes that were written by Mr. McTavish, and that the 2 garages flanking the building on each side creates a focus on the garage and stone and overwhelms the heritage house. Visually, I tend to agree with that, and when I look at the drawings and the front drawings, there's as much garage as there is house. So to me, visually, that doesn't speak to the preservation of the heritage building. Those are just my comments, and I would indicate I will not be in support of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Any further discussions? I see none. Okay, the motion before us is that the application be approved as applied for, subject to the final approval and site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning and our standard second condition. All those in support? Okay. All those opposed? Okay. Your application has been approved.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Have a good evening.
Good evening. Ms. Murray. Application CAV 064 of 2021 at 220 Southview Road. Again, it's CAV 064 of 2021 at 220 Southview Road. If anyone is interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conferencing. Hello, Mr. Kieran. You need to unmute yourself.
Good evening again, members of the committee, Madam Chair. Joris Kieran, I'm the agent for the applicants. Have a brief presentation, if you'll allow me. So we have an application before you this evening, which is for 2 variances variances. One is also for, as my previous application, for a small garage area increase, as noted on slide 1. I wanted to also note, I'm sure the members are aware that this application is actually really a renewal of a previously approved application from 2 years ago. This was the exact same house, pretty much being approved under the previous decision, and it expired because we're in for permit now, but basically the clock ran out on us, so that's why we're back in front of you tonight. But the house itself hasn't changed. So the second slide is just indicating the areas on the second floor that are the main contributing factors to the RFA increase that we're requesting. Yeah, committee staff supports both variances, and I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Kieran. Any questions at this time? Ms. Secretary Treasurer, if there's anyone who is interested in speaking to this application, has anyone called in or raised their hand?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the application as presented this evening by the applicant's agent, and noting that is technical in the sense that their time elapsed from the last time that they applied, and noting that there was no oral or written objections to the application, I do find that the application does meet the intent of the Planning Act, and would like to move that it be approved as applied for with the following 2 conditions. That the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated April 14th, 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the construction.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Kieran. I believe you're with us for the next application.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just bear with me for a moment. Application CAV 065 of 2021 at 1427 Lakeshore Road West. Again, application CAV 065 of 2021 at 1427 Lakeshore Road West. If there's anyone who'd like to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. And staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. Okay, Mr. Kieran, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, members of the committee. Joris Kieran, agent for the applicant. This is a single variance that we're requesting for this particular property. Simply a reduction of front yard setback. The existing house is set quite far back on the property, as you can see from this site plan, and it's indicated by the dashed outline of the existing dwelling. In order to achieve compliance with the rear yard setback, and also to bring the house in line with sort of the average of the houses on either side, we're just moving it forward slightly, as indicated on this plan. So it's a reduction of about 2 meters, I believe, less than 2 meters. Oh, slightly over 2 meters, approximately 2.5 meters moving forward. So pretty straightforward. Everything else complies about the house. No other variances. Height complies, setbacks, RFA, lot coverage, everything else. And planning staff also supports this variance. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? If there's no one who's called in for this application or has raised their hand, the Secretary Treasurer ready to take the matter into committee. Okay, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the submitted materials and undertaken my site visit and heard the comments from the applicant, I am satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the four tests of the Act. The reduced front yard setback will better align the building with the existing dwellings immediately adjacent. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to two conditions. Those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated April 7th, 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no members of the public present or comments provided with respect to this matter.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Mr. Kieran.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Okay, application CAV 025 of 2021 at 1177 Summerlee Street. Again, it's application 025 of 2021, deferred from March 9th at 1177 Summerlee Street. Good evening, Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, town staff. Graham Barrett, agent for the owners of 1177 Summerlee Street.
Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. The presentation is online.
Great, thank you. This item was previously deferred in order to address potential concerns from Conservation Halton. Since then, we provided them with the information they required and were advised on April 6th that they no longer had any concerns with this proposal. So I requested the item be put back on the agenda. We're scheduled for this meeting. Last week, I was contacted again by Conservation Halton, and they requested some additional information. It seems they missed something in their initial review, namely that the proposed dwelling could be no closer to the floodplain than the existing dwelling. If you move ahead to the site plan and zoom in on the southwest corner there, below that red area, the existing dwelling is 2.25 meters from the floodplain. That's the dimension below the red area. That's the southwest corner. The proposed dwelling was going to be 2.18 meters from the floodplain at the west side, but in order for a permit to be issued by Conservation Halton, the house had to be shifted 7 centimeters on the lot to be no more than that 2.25 meters circled in red there. These comments came in at the 11th hour, but the designer has modified this site plan, and I submitted a revised set of drawings to staff in an effort to avoid another deferral. I thank them for their patience with the last minute adjustment. There were no changes to the dwelling, and this slight adjustment has no effect on the proposed variances. If you see fit to approve this application this evening and tie approval to plans submitted, I have a concern that if we go to conservation for permit and perhaps that 7 centimeter movement wasn't enough for them, I have a concern that maybe we'd find ourselves no longer in general accordance, which had to be shifted a couple more centimeters. But it is possible to move that house a little further to the east without triggering a side yard setback variance. So I'm not sure if such a minor change would take it out of general accordance. It's just a concern that I have. Otherwise, this proposal is the same as when it was reviewed by staff, and I appreciate their supportive comments and agree with their assessment that this proposal passes the 4 tests and is suitable in terms of scale and massing for the street and the area. My parents used to live around the corner on Sutter Road, so I'm very familiar with this neighborhood, and it's very much in transition, and this new home is sensitive to that, and it'll fit well with the changing character of the area. I'm also aware of the one neighbor who had expressed concerns, and once I received the initial word that conservation had no issue with the proposal, I dropped the letter at her home explaining this. Her concerns were addressed, And as I mentioned, moving the house slightly away from the floodplain will satisfy conservation's more recent surprise comments. The owners have also discussed this proposal with several other neighbors, and none were opposed. So it's two variances, one for a garage area being requested to accommodate a little bit of parking and storage space, and the lot coverage variance is being requested to accommodate the proposed dwelling and covered porches. The dwelling accounts for 24.5% of coverage. The rear covered porch is 2.98%, and the front covered porch is 0.84. So in conclusion, I believe this proposal passes the 4 tests. Staff are in support. Conservation has no objection, and their conditions can be met for a permit. And as far as I know, there's no opposition from neighbors. So this will be a tasteful and suitable update to the site and the neighborhood as a whole. Thanks. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Very well. Mr. Hassan, how would you feel about amending the recommended condition to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning so that we can capture any potential changes by Conservation Halton, but hoping that that will not be the case?
Yeah, through Madam Chair, I have no issues with that in relation to the site plan. I don't believe, Mr. Barrett may correct me if I'm wrong, but there would be required changes to the elevation. So the elevation should be approved as applied for just the site plan that may need to be slightly shifted based on the Conservation Halton comments.
Okay,
that would be fine, yes.
Okay, so whoever moves that motion just bears that in mind. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this point of Mr. Barrett or Mr. Hassan? Okay, I see none. If there, Madam Secretary, I did forget to state the number again. Has anyone called seeking to speak to this application?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I see no one on my panel. Okay, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of this application, having taken into consideration the comments presented by the applicant this evening, and noting that the comments from the one neighbor, Ms. Andrea Mann at 374 Lees Lane, have been taken into consideration and addressed with regards to comments from Conservation Halton. And thank you to the applicant for addressing those concerns with the neighbor. I think it goes a long way. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the elevation drawings dated 2021-04-06 and in general accordance with, or rather than in general accordance to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Barrett. The last item on our agenda is application CAV 031 of 2021, deferred from March the 23rd at 2330 Khalsa Gate. Again, it's CAV 031 of 2021 at 2330 Khalsa Gate.
Good evening, members of the committee. Oz Kamal here with MHBC Planning. Here on behalf of Willow Bay Development, Inc. Ms. McHale, do you want me to just go ahead and go into my presentation, or do you want me to wait?
Yeah, just give me a second. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Application CAV 031 of 2021 at 2330 Khalsa Gate. If you're watching and you'd like to speak to this matter, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. And staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join our video conferencing. Thank you, Mr. Kamal. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. This is an application for minor variance
that's in conjunction with a site plan approval that's currently underway. We're at the tail end of site plan approval. We've been working intimately with planning and urban design on this 10-story retirement residence. As you can see there, the general shape and form of the retirement residence on the site plan. If you could go to the next, to the elevations, please. So the requested variances, we're requesting two variances. One is to the overall building height. We're requesting an adjustment from 30 meters, which is what the bylaw reads. 10 stories, 30 meters. We're asking for 10 stories, 34.5 meters. The reason for the increase in height, because this is a retirement residence, the internal floor-to-floor heights are higher, and with that, in addition, for the additional HVAC equipment that goes part and parcel with a retirement residence, there's adjustments made at each floor. Instead of being the standard 3 meters, the floors need to be 3.2 meters as they go up. And then on the, I believe it's the 5th floor, there's amenities for the residents of the retirement home. And at that floor, we're asking for 3.5 meters on the internal floor, which again provides an overall height of 34.5 meters, while at the same time still staying within that 10-story height limit as identified through the official plan and the zoning bylaw special provision 358. The second variance is to request a parapet to project 3.5 meters, whereas the bylaw permits them to project 2 meters. And this is, again, working with urban design staff and trying to create some architectural distinction. If you could go to the next slide, sorry, the elevations is what I was looking for. These are just site plan details. Thank you, perfect. And you can see there that the idea being the central focal point, having some architectural distinction from the balance of the site. And in doing that, we've created this projection, which just requires us to get this variance of 3.5 meters. I note planning staff are supportive of both variances subject to the conditions of final site plan approval and expiry condition on the variance. We're fine with that. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions of Mr. Kamal at this time or items of clarification? I see none. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, if there's no one who's called in to speak to this application, we're ready to move the matter into committee. I don't see anyone on my panel here.
No phone calls.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move a motion? Did you have a question, Ms. Murray? Go ahead.
I do, Madam Chair. And my question, Madam Chair, through you to town staff, it would appear under variance 2 and town staff notes that there are some concerns noting the location, the height of this building. Staff have identified several areas of concern. So it strikes me that we're being asked to approve the building height while concerns still remain. And while I appreciate that it's to be constructed in accordance with final approved site plan to the director, satisfaction of the director of planning, I think there are so many things within that, the comments that we're being asked to approve a variance with still so many concerns existing. Could you please have town staff perhaps address that? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. In relation to the comments and a review of the variance application, staff didn't have a concern with the overall building height. It was more of the aesthetics and the building treatment of the facade that is being reviewed through the site plan process. Unfortunately, I'm not fully involved in that site plan, but Mr. Kamal may be able to address the comments as they relate to the first submission of the site plan. But that's my understanding. It has to do more with the aesthetics and style of the building itself, not the actual building height.
Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just add, thanks, Brandon. We actually had a meeting with urban design yesterday, and one of the items of discussion was, could you go a little bit higher? And I said, whoa. We have a variance application tomorrow, and let's get what we've got, and what we did deal with, to Brandon's point, was the overall massing specifically as you're going northbound on Bronte and what that facade looks like, because they're calling this a landmark building, and they're just asking us to break it up a little bit more with some color palettes and materiality. That's what it was to deal with.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Ms. Murray? Do you have any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Okay, very well. If there are no further items of clarification or comments, we can take the matter into committee and someone can move a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the materials, heard the presentation by the applicant, and having reviewed the written staff report, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act, and as such, I'll put forward a motion of approval. I would, noting that there were no members of the public present with respect to this matter, the motion should be subject to two conditions, those being that the building be constructed in general accordance with the final approved site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night. Last item, confirmation of our minutes for April the 20th. Go ahead, Ms. Murray. Thank you. Moving the minutes, and then motion to adjourn. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Hardcastle at 8:27 p.m.